When looking at the past few years of Nintendo releases, I noticed that there's a lot of re-releases. There's a significant amount of ports, mainly ports of Nintendo Wii U games, to the more popular console, the Nintendo Switch, which has a much larger install base. Personally, I'm glad that this is the case. It gives me the chance to enjoy these Wii U titles all over again, while now having the ability to play them portably in handheld mode. This got me thinking, however, of the older games that could make their way to the Switch. Aside from Wii U ports and the NSO Classic Game Library, there's always the possibility for Nintendo to take things one step further and remake some of their classics, putting a new spin on tried and true games and bringing them to a new, vast audience. With the recent release of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, fantastic, full-on remakes of the Nintendo DS's Diamond and Pearl versions, it got me thinking what other games would be top candidates for Nintendo to fully remake for Switch. Without further ado, in no particular order, here are my quick thoughts on my personal top 5 games Nintendo should remake. Personally, I think this is one of the more interesting choices on my list. Going back into Nintendo's retro library, the Donkey Kong Country platforming titles are some of, in my opinion, the best aging games in there. The 3D models turned polygonal sprites are still a sight to behold on the SNES, and nowadays, instead of being a technical marvel, are now an interesting visual style uncommon in video games today. Then, this might indicate to you, if they've aged so well, then why on earth would they need a remake? And this is a fair point. I don't think these games need a remake, but that doesn't mean I don't think adding a new coat of paint and some quality of life features would be great. Whether a remake would be simply the first DKC title, or even better, following the Metroid Prime model with a collection of the first 3 classics, either way would blow my mind. Not much has to change in my opinion. Just remake these games in the Tropical Freeze engine and add a more modern, less punishing save system. Maybe a remastered soundtrack and call it a day. In my opinion, any sort of classic Donkey Kong Country remake would be amazing to see, and I would be hyped out of my mind for it. This one is a gimme, but it just has to be said. Super Mario RPG might be the singular top candidate for a remake in Nintendo's entire library. Similarly to DKC, it's an SNES title with an interesting art style that's aged somewhat gracefully. But this doesn't mean a modern coat of paint for this pioneering RPG wouldn't be gorgeous. I can only imagine what Nintendo's art teams could create with SMRPG as the base. I see Super Mario RPG as a game ripe with remake potential. It's a super fun action RPG, almost lost to time. The grandfather of the Paper Mario and Mario & Luigi RPG series deserves some time in the sun. And a Nintendo Switch remake might be exactly what is needed to revive this title, which is pretty much currently lost to the modern generation. Super Mario RPG is not even available on NSO. Does this mean they're planning something? Probably not, but hey, we can dream. And speaking of games inspired by SMRPG, the first Paper Mario is also a great remake candidate. I hear fans of the Paper Mario series constantly debating on whether the series should return to its roots to the more Super Mario RPG style of turn-based gameplay. And a beautiful remake of Paper Mario 64, or even its widely beloved GameCube follow-up, Thousand Year Door, would be a fantastic way to test the waters to see if a true return to form for the series would be a hit sales-wise. And hey, us Paper Mario fans definitely wouldn't be complaining. Doing some very light pattern analysis on the recent Fire Emblem releases, we'll notice that we've gotten the Fates games for the 3DS, then a remake title in Echoes or Shadows of Valentia, and then the big new Switch title, Three Houses, was the last release and all new entry in the series. Following this admittedly very small and probably meaningless indicator, it could mean that the next Fire Emblem release for Switch could be some kind of remake title. This falls right in line with recent rumors swirling around that the next Switch Fire Emblem release is remakes of Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, the GameCube and Wii series entries. These two games are fantastic remake candidates in my opinion, so this is a rumor I would love to see proven true. However, we did recently get the limited release of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, so maybe this timed release remaster fulfilled the remake quota and throws this theory into whack. Perhaps the next Fire Emblem game to hit shelves will be a big, all-new mainline game, and another remake is not in the cards. Only time will tell, but this doesn't change the fact that the Fire Emblem back catalog is ripe with games that would make fantastic remakes on Nintendo Switch. There are even some classic titles in the mix that could make it outside of Japan for the first time ever via an all-new remake. You never know. Another absolute gimme, but I couldn't have this list without it. Hardly a week goes by where I don't think of an Earthbound remake in the Link's Awakening art style. I can't think of anything more perfect than the beloved Earthbound adventure reset in a world of plasticky toys and motion blur backgrounds. Throw in the fact that a remake could include some remastered music for some of Nintendo's all-time best tracks, and you have an exciting prospect that could do wonders to revive yet another classic game nearly lost to time. An Earthbound remake might be a long shot due to series creator Shigesato Itoi's rightful protective nature over the IP. I don't blame him. A Mother 2 remake will have to be good, great even, to satisfy the raving fanbase, and probably his own standards as series creator. It's hard to recast and remake a masterpiece, but the possibility of seeing Egoland, Ness, Paula & Co. in a shiny new art style is enough to make me salivate. It's a long shot, but I'll, like many of you, probably never give up on the possibility. And hey, just like Super Mario RPG, the game is bafflingly nowhere to be found on the SNES NSO library. Why? Does Nintendo have something up their sleeves with the IP? Never say never. And for my last choice, I couldn't help but have a three-way tie. I couldn't choose between these three candidates, so I'll briefly talk about them all. First, the Zelda Oracle games are prime remake candidates that I'd be willing to bet get remakes someday. 2D Zelda now seems to be following a Pokemon-like pattern where the 2D releases all seem to get remakes over time based on the age of the original game. And it's super easy for me to imagine Oracle of Ages and Seasons getting a dual version remake release, or maybe even a dual pack on a single cartridge if we're lucky. The next candidate is another 2D Zelda title, but probably not the one you're expecting. This one is also a title kinda lost to time and by some outdated technology that could easily be revived with a modern overhaul and the help of Nintendo's online-capable Switch handheld console hybrid. Imagine this. Four Swords Adventures multiplayer re-released in 2021. I've always saw Four Swords coming back as a potential NSO tie-in reward, but imagine a full-on remake of the GameCube's Four Swords Adventures, a game that was notoriously difficult to play properly due to needing multiple people to play with, GBA consoles, and the GBA GameCube adapter cables. I don't know anyone who actually played Four Swords Adventures multiplayer back in the day, but a remaster for Switch would do wonders for the accessibility. All you would need is your Switch and an internet connection. Free Four Swords Adventures, and bring it to Switch for a much bigger audience to enjoy. Finally, I think Metroid Fusion is a fantastic remake candidate as well, with Mercury Steam proving they can be trusted with the Metroid IP due to the fantastic recent release of Dread. The inevitable question of a classic Metroid remake is going to rear its head. After much deliberation, I actually think Fusion is the best candidate for this studio if they were going to be trusted with another classic game remake. Why? Well, I think it fits their style the best. Some areas of Fusion, notably the SAX sections, would be a natural progression from Dread stealth sections, and Fusion's cutscenes and epic boss fights would allow Mercury Steam to flex their world building and action platforming muscle just like they did in Dread. My first thought for Metroid Remake was obviously Super, and I definitely wouldn't be opposed to this, but I just think as a stylistic choice, Fusion is the best if the game was being handled by Mercury Steam. And I mean, the game is nearly 20 years old. Even though it still looks and feels great to this day, I don't think any of us Metroid fans would turn down a chance to see Metroid 4 from an all-new lens. I don't think it would be quite as simple as remaking Fusion in the Dread engine. For example, Fusion didn't have a slide or melee counter, so those things would have to be accounted for like in Samus Returns or omitted entirely. Either way, a Fusion remake, or any Metroid remake for that matter, will always be an exciting prospect. So there you have it. My choices for the top classic game candidates Nintendo should remake on the Switch, or maybe for whatever kind of successor console comes down the road in the future. What do you think of my picks? Do all these games need remakes, or would this just be wasted effort on Nintendo's part? Did I miss any games that are also clearly great candidates for a modern day remake? What Nintendo remakes do you predict we'll see in the future? Let me know in the comments below, and let's have a discussion about it. And remember, for all things Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, and more, remember to keep it here for more quality Nintendo content. See you next time.